Welcome to the Essentially You podcast. Jodi Cohen, honey, how are you doing today?
Oh my God, it's always fun. I love talking to other oil people. It's so nice to connect with you.
Oh, absolutely. And I love talking about the brain. And goodness knows, so many of us are struggling with brain fog or memory issues or lack of alertness or just stress, all the stuff that's going on that affects our brain. And I think even each and every one of us know that we've got to upgrade or tune up our brain one way or the other, especially as we get older. So we're talking about specifically how we can leverage the use of essential oils to boost our brain and not only that, but to heal our body. So, Jodi, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this conversation and literally into some really powerful solutions to get the job done, I would love for you to really share what was the impetus for you to not only fall in love with essential oils, but then really dive into the benefits that they have. This is the focus of your new book. And so I know that it's got to be a very big passion for you.
Yeah, I think necessity is the mother of invention. It was kind of my rock bottom. My then husband had to be hospitalized for depression. My kids were little, and I had been overachieving for so long. I literally ran out of gas. I couldn't get up. They had to go to school. I'd wake up with them, make them breakfast, pack their lunch, take them to school, come home, set the alarm for pickup. And it was not sustainable, but nothing was working. I was trying everything I could think of, and I still could barely function. And fortunately, I had just put on a charity event with a friend who liked oils. She liked doTERRA, and she came by with a huge box as a thank you gift for me and said, you have been so high stress for so long, which means the chemical cortisol is really high in your system, which means you're probably chronically inflamed and nothing you're ingesting is actually getting into your system. So oils are great because you can smell them and they go directly to the brain. You can topically apply them. They get into the skin. Like, try this. And I figured, why not? There's nothing to lose. And I was so exhausted and desperate. I just kind of made up my first recipe and put them on my adrenals, on the low back. And it was the only thing that helped. It made a huge difference. And I got more done in that day than I had probably in the previous month. And then I was lying in bed that night and thought, wow, that worked really well. I should keep doing that. And then I thought, oh, maybe it'll help with sleep. So I made something up for sleep and that helped. And I just kept making things up and it kept working. And then when I felt like myself again, I thought that was interesting. I wonder why it worked. And I started researching because I have a background as a journalist. And, when something moves the needle that profoundly, you're like, wow, who knew? And I need to, other people need to know this because no one needs to feel that
horrid or tired or exhausted or burned out. And goodness knows there are someone's listening right now who's feeling just that way and is looking for something. So let's talk about the how, right? Because I love essential oils, you love essential oils, and I had a very similar profound experience. Using it was a citrus essential oil that really just boosted my mood, boosted my energy, and it was so immediate. It's so hard to ignore, Jodi, when it's so immediate. Can you talk a little bit about how essential oils can immediately have that impact on our brain and our overall health and well-being?
Yeah, most people don't realize the reason cocaine is snorted through the nose is because that's the fastest route to the brain. People don't realize that your sense of smell bypasses every other sense, has to go through a part of the brain called the thalamus before going to the amygdala, which kind of controls the emotions. Smell, because it's so critical to our survival. We smell food, we smell water, we smell predator odor. It has direct access. So it gets into the part of the brain immediately. It doesn't need to go through our digestive system into our bloodstream and then be pumped from the heart to the body. It is immediate. And so I think that's why it has such a profound impact.
I agree. I always say it's like getting in a private jet and flying right over the border, to Canada or to Mexico. You don't have to go through border patrol to get there because
Yep.
it's so fast acting. And who doesn't want that, especially when we are feeling sluggish, we're feeling tired, we're feeling moody or irritable or sad or anger or whatever those emotions may be. I always, a friend of mine a long time ago, an aromatherapist, told me that you can choose your mood by simply picking up an essential oil. And I thought that was profound.
That's so true. It's kind of like you can choose your mood by putting on a different color.
Yeah. So true. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hence my yellow
Yeah, I love
today.
it. I
Yeah.
love yellow.
It's such a fun color, such a bright color.
So sunny. Yeah.
Mm. All right, so I love that. So that is one of the really interesting and unique ways in which essential oils can support us is that they go straight into the brain, no holds bar, no having to be modulated, and it makes a profound impact. But also talk to me about, besides going straight into the brain, and we know that we're talking about brain health as well, but also about topical application. Are there ways in which that you love using topical application to kind of get an immediate response as well?
Yeah, this was one thing that I was surprised in the research because, a lot of people, when they're looking at topical application, they're assuming it has to get into the bloodstream and then have kind of a systemic effect. And what I realized is that you can use oils on reflex points, kind of like acupuncture points. And it's almost like a different freeway. One of my favorite points is actually right behind the ear. If you feel behind the ear, that bone, that's your mastoid bone. That is where this really critical nerve called the vagus nerve that helps calm your whole system down is really accessible. And you can use oils right on that point, and it's almost like an acupuncture needle. It literally works like a gear shift, like your bike. You're in high gear, you hit a hill. If you can downshift to a lower gear, all of a sudden it's really easy to bike up the hill as opposed to struggling in a high gear. If you're overwhelmed and feeling anxious, it's very likely that your sense of safety is compromised and you're reacting kind of from a place of danger. If you can gear shift into that place where you're okay, it doesn't really matter what's going on in the outside world. Your dog can be barking, your baby can be crying, you can be hungry, and you're still in a place where you can respond kind of from your best self. That's really what I think everyone wants. They're looking for this way to calm their anxiety.
I love that. And can you speak into a little bit more about, because I know we're hearing so much about the connection with the vagus nerve and reducing the stress response system, or connection with the vagus nerve and reducing anxiousness or that butterfly feeling in our gut. What are some of the benefits of calming down that vagus nerve?
Yeah. So, what people may or may not know is that your whole operating system is called your autonomic nervous system. It controls everything automatic, your breathing, your heart rate, your ability to digest food. And it has different gears, just like a car, right? There is the gas pedal, which happens when you're in danger, the fight or flight response called sympathetic, or the everything's good, I can clean up the house and relax, rest and digest parasympathetic. And the vagus nerve is the gear shift between the two. It's literally the information highway between your brain and your body, brain. So all of those gut feelings, intuition, intuitive hits, that is all carried through your vagus nerve. And what's interesting is when it perceives danger, when your life is threatened, it has to prioritize resources differently. It has to allocate blood flow to the arms and the legs away from digestion and detoxification. And it also has to kind of shift your attention, because if your life is threatened, you cannot take in all the potential stimuli because you'll be distracted and you'll die. You have to selectively focus on what will keep you alive in that moment. So that shuts down your intuition. That shuts down your ability to connect to other people. The vagus nerve actually controls the pupils, the black part of the eyes. They get bigger, they dilate when you're in danger. So it's really easy if you're trying to have a conversation with someone in your life and you see that their pupils are really big, that means they're stressed and they're not going to be able to hear you in the same way. So the more you, like when my kids were little, they used to say, connect before you correct. Your kid misbehaves. If you yell at them, they can't hear you. If you go cuddle, calm them down and their pupils shrink up, they can take it in better. So I think the more we can kind of stimulate our vagus nerve to shift into that calmer place, the easier it is to navigate everything in life.
Hmm. And what are some oils that's so powerful? And I love that we have that ability, like you said, to shift the lever in a really profound way, because goodness knows when we're stuck in that stress response system, that survival mode, it can be so hard to get ourselves out of there. Oftentimes, many people don't even know they're in it. So, what kind of essential oils can we use? Would you recommend a single oil, or would it be a blend, like a little roller that you can roll over that part behind between the mastoid and the ear?
Yeah, like you, I like blends better
Mhm.
because when you take two oils and you combine them, you get kind of the benefit of both. So the blend I like is 25% clove, 75% distilled lime, not pressed lime, because when it's distilled, it's less photosensitive, and then kind of diluting it. But the combination of that, Clove is super stimulatory. And when it's stimulatory, it basically activates the nerve, but it has larger molecules. So it takes longer to get through the skin. Lime, like a lot of citrus blends, has smaller molecules. So when you combine them, you get stimulatory plus small molecules. And then the carrier oil I like for that is fractionated coconut oil because it has kind of a faster impact.
Mm. And so just in a little roller with fractionated coconut oil, we can just roll that over. Is there, knowing that so many people are stuck in their stress response mode and that their autonomic nervous center is literally firing off kind of that stranger danger alert, is it a good idea to preemptively be putting on the clove and lime? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and also if you think about even digesting your food, you need to be in that rest and digest state for everything to kind of, constipation is often when you're stuck in sympathetic. It's like your digestive system is like a moving walkway. And if it's prioritizing survival, it doesn't really matter if you're digesting your nutrients. So before meals, it's almost like a gear shift of, oh, okay, I'm in a relaxed state. I can assimilate my nutrients.
Powerful. I love that because you're absolutely right. I have noticed that so many women, because I'm mostly focused on women, that when they are in a stress response mode, their chronic constipation is very much a real thing. And, it's so funny. We always focus on the gut. We always focus on oils like ginger and fennel and peppermint for helping to support the gut, but that's not always the root cause. The root cause could be that you're in constant stress mode and you're forcing the body to either shut it down or move it, like just get stuck in the process
Yeah,
of moving through.
it's not Goldilocks. It's not just
No,
right.
it's not a win for a lot of us
Yeah.
in that moment. I love that. I am so glad that we got into the vagus nerve conversation earlier because I know that this is something that so many women are struggling with. Now, another area where we see, especially coming out of this pandemic, and I know for so many of us, we're still very much in it. Anxiety is a big area of concern, feeling anxious, feeling irritable. What can we focus on for really helping to support that?
Yeah, and this is really easy because this is whatever oil you have in your house. It's just choosing to smell it through your left nostril. And I'll explain why. So there's a whole branch of chiropractic that's looking at the different regions and hemispheres of the brain and really trying to put them into balance. So the right hemisphere is known as kind of the ruminating hemisphere. It's more of the analytical overthinking. And specifically your forehead, this is another reason that smelling oils helps you focus, because when you smell, the oil travels directly to the forehead, which is called the prefrontal cortex and helps with all executive function. So anxiety is often overactivation of your right forehead. So the best way to kind of nip that in the bud is to activate the left forehead. And the easiest way to do that is to smell anything. I like orange, but any oil works through your left nostril. And that basically turns on the left hemisphere, balances the two hemispheres, and you feel less anxious immediately.
And do you ever recommend pairing that with some deep breathing as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Love that. Okay,
Yeah.
so so plug up the right side,
Yep.
grab the oil. Can we just put the oil up to like the
Yep.
bottle up to our nose? Uh,
Direct inhalation. Yep. Make it as
Perfect.
simple, easy as possible.
Mm,
Especially, if you are prone to anxiety attacks while driving, or I used to have panic attacks in supermarket checkout lines, wherever you are, just know that that's an easy way to kind of work through it. And
I love
breathing,
it.
especially the exhale, the more you can elongate the exhale, that seems to really calm your nervous system and your heart rate.
And have you found, I know you said any oil, and you just kind of highlighted citruses and particularly orange or a tangerine. Are there other oils that you find are more highlighting for kind of calming the system down, like florals or wood oils, anything like that?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that goes on is that we get, all of the oils with deep roots, like the grounding oils, the vetiver, the cedar wood, the sandalwood, anything that has really deep roots in the earth, I think helps us feel more grounded and centered and connected. So you could either apply it to the bottom of the feet. There are different reflex points on the bottom of the feet that you can highlight, like the big toe tends to be kind of correlated with the brain. You can apply it any way that you like. It's kind of user's choice, but smelling it can help you feel centered. Vetiver seems to work really, really well for really centering.
Yes, agreed. It's so funny. I hear so many interesting things about the oil vetiver. I have some friends who vetiver is so calming and it's great for anxiousness, especially paired with like a lavender or a clary sage. And then I'll have other friends who find it so invigorating, like energy driven. And I find that the people who find it energetic are definitely more few, but it fascinates me that an oil like vetiver can go one way or the other. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, you know what I think it is? I think, you know how like herbs, adaptogenic herbs, they kind of meet you where you're at. So if
Hmm.
you're really tired, they give you energy. If you're really ramped up, they kind of calm you down. So I think it's really dependent on where the person is in that moment. And I think it's interesting that you brought up floral. I think the grounding oils like vetiver, frankincense are really good for kind of calming and centering. I think the floral ones are really good for getting you in the heart space, like rose especially. I think it makes you feel kind of more love and appreciation, and the brain can't multitask, so when you're kind of feeling happy, it's hard to feel anxious at the same time. And then I think the citrus are more kind of uplifting, like they just boost your mood. So I think any of those kind of whatever you like, there's no wrong answer, but I think that's why they work a little differently on different people.
I love that so much. I call citrus oils because of the monoterpene content and limonene, like they are effervescent little happy bubbles that you breathe in. I think about, how they just kind of fire off that's happy neurochemistry. And so how I start my day every single day is I have a tangerine oil by my bed and I put a drop in my palms, rub my palms together, and then take like about 5 to 7 deep belly breaths. And it's my favorite abundance oil. And it just sets the tone for my day. It's so hard. Like you mentioned, when you breathe in something so bubbly and beautiful, like a floral, like a rose or a jasmine too, that it's really hard to have like a crappy day when you set the day up with some beautiful chemistry, you know? So I love that.
And I love how you combine it with intention. Like, I really do feel like plants in general kind of collaborate with us. And the more you overlay, like, this is going to boost my mood, the more it does.
Yeah. Yes, agreed. I like it's just combining that makes it so much more potent.
Yes.
Speaking of potency, let's talk about brain function. Let's talk about brain fog, memory, alertness, or lack thereof. So often, so many women reach out to me and they're just like, I just feel like I'm staring at my computer screen and I forget what I'm doing, or I am staring at whatever, I'm doing whatever, and it's just like a zombie. I just can't, I feel like I lost my alertness. Or even again, we're always like that word just flutters away, whatever it may be. It's just like you're in the middle of a sentence and pop, the word's gone. And
Mhm.
so this is happening a lot. We know that it's oftentimes considered brain fog. And there could be a little level of inflammation that's going on there. We got to clear up, especially connected to the brain, or sorry, to the gut. But what kind of, a lot of women, we want the instant win. We want the instant focus. We want the instant alert. We want to be back in the game. So,
Yeah.
what are some things that we can do to create that? Let's say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I've got hours of work left, and I'm going home to take care of my other job, right? Taking care of my family, all the work that has to be done in the
Yeah.
household. And I am on fumes. And
Yeah.
it's either a cappuccino or a kind bar, or what else do we have?
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting? So the kind bar is glucose. And the
Yes.
brain basically needs oxygen and it needs sugar. And the challenge with getting oxygen into the brain is gravity, and also that the veins can kind of get tighter. So anything that kind of expands the vasculature, so rosemary, peppermint, basil, anything that kind of opens cypress, the circulation, that really helps get more oxygen to the brain, and then that enhances brain function. So it could be as simple as smelling peppermint, putting things on the sides of the neck. That tends to be kind of a bottleneck point for blood flow. The back of the head, all of those things can kind of get more energy into the brain really quickly.
I love that. I think there was a research article I read recently that says peppermint essential oil expands our oxygen capacity by 7%,
Yes.
which is huge. I would say, like, if you want
Huge.
to walk, if you got somewhere to go, or you are hesitant to get into the gym, or you are trying to get through the rest of your day, like peppermint is that extra, it's that oxygen boost that we need to really not only oxygenate the brain, but also oxygenate our muscles and our
Mhm.
respiratory system. So I love that. And then also talk to me about some of the elements, if you're aware of some of the elements of rosemary. We hear about, even Shakespeare, how it's the memory herb. Well, are there any, besides the fact that it's oxygenating the brain and it's helping to open up the vascular system, is there anything else in particular that we like herbs like rosemary and basil are helping to support us in?
Yeah, I mean, they do a lot of things. As you know, they certainly are supportive for hormones as well. But yeah, most of the research that I looked at for rosemary was about kind of dilation and vasculature. And also, I think that I think that it helps with the prefrontal cortex. I think that different areas of the brain do different things, right? And so smelling it, I feel like it kind of pinpoints in a little bit of a way. And I actually think it works better in combination. Like I
Yes.
like rosemary better as part of a blend. And bizarrely, when you combine it with citrus, it really seems to amplify like that whole lemon rosemary combination. It's a good team player. I mean, the individual research really points to kind of the dilation, but in combination, I almost think like it makes, when you get kind of the men's choir together and they all harmonize, it really kind of brings out the best in everything else. But yeah.
I love that. I love that. I had read that one of the chemical constituents, 1,8-cinnalol, and that it can boost mitochondrial function. So I thought that was so fascinating. But it's also I mean, I just even the aroma, I feel like is
Yeah,
just very awakening, you know?
right. Well, and it's the vagus nerve that stimulates the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is kind of anti-inflammatory. That's another thing. So what I think is going on in the brain is either poor oxygen function, kind of poor toxic drainage, like the brain cleans house when you're sleeping. So if you're not sleeping, it's really hard to kind of get things out of the brain, even kind of the metabolic waste. And then the other challenge is the neck is a big bottleneck. And so the garbage doesn't necessarily drain down with the lymphatics. So anything you can do, any oil that you can kind of put on your neck and just move in a downward motion helps with drainage. And then I also think that it's stress. So I think it's stress, toxicity, and sleep and oxygen flow that kind of combines. And you do such an amazing job speaking to sleep. But I think the more you can kind of help the body function the way it's supposed to, the easier it is to avoid inflammation and brain fog and all of those things.
Hmm. All of it, I agree with 100%. I was curious in terms of lymphatics, because yes, a lot of people don't know as the brain is, I mean, it makes sense when we're sleeping, the brain is cleaning house. I call it a brainwashing. um,
Yeah, it is. It's like a car wash.
yeah, it's like, yeah, the glial cells, they shrink down and then we start to clear everything out. And a separate concern, I talk about this on the podcast all the time, is if we eat too close to when we go to bed, we're not able to do that work either.
Yep.
And so we have a two problem situation. One, some of us are snacking late at night, and then two, 10:30 quickly becomes 2:30 a.m. real fast, right? That is what happens to my husband all the time. All of a sudden it's 10:30 and then it's 2:30. And then he's like, I don't know how that happened to me. I'm like, really? I'm like, that was 4 hours ago. So yeah. And I want to just speak into lymphatic massage. And are there specific, I know you said any oils, and I'm always putting my brain boosting oils on the back of my neck.
That's
Brain
great.
boosting oils. I used to put a lot of peppermint on the back of my neck.
Yeah, the mints,
Yes.
peppermint and spearmint.
So powerful. One, I also have neck stuff. And so that's helping my neck in general with an analgesic perspective. Are lymphatics major issue in terms of the garbage disposal and moving things out of the body? Are there oils specifically that you love for lymphatic drainage, and do we do that as a massage? Can we do them in a bath?
Mhm. Yeah. So, what most people don't realize is that the lymph flows in one direction, right? And it mostly flows on the left side. And so the places that it gets congested, like think of, the bottlenecks in traffic, they're always in the same place, like by the certain exit. So the neck, so anything you can do in a downward motion, castor oil, even though it's kind of sticky and messy, it's really great for moving the lymphatic and for anti-inflaming. So especially if you're going to do it, like sometimes if you're doing an Epsom salt bath, which is great for combining, I sometimes do, if I know I'm going to wash it off anyway, oil on the neck, on the sides of the neck. And then the big point is the clavicles. So right here is a really great point. Even if you're not using oil, just kind of giving yourself a gentle self massage if that feels slightly tender. Spearmint is my favorite. I think that's really good for moving. Peppermint, if you like that better. And then under the armpits is another great point. And then I know you talk a lot about the liver. I think, the body is a hydraulic system, right? So if it's supposed to go from the cell to the lymph to the blood to the liver to the gallbladder to the gut to the toilet. But if the liver is congested, then it gets backed up into the blood and it doesn't actually leave. So anything you can do for the liver, castor oil, the gallbladder, black cumin seed is great for the gallbladder. Just making sure that the body works in harmony, not in isolation. So yes, oil is great for the lymph, and do everything you tell everyone to do for the liver, the gallbladder, the gut, and just make sure that things are leaving.
Yes, and castor oil packs I just love castor oil on the liver. I love it on the
Yeah.
gut. I love it on the reproductive system. You're absolutely right. My biggest concern around a lot of these organ systems is the congestion. And castor oil has a really great way of moving things along. And
Yes,
yes, and you pair it with essential oils, and it's just like it's such a big win.
it
And why
is.
wouldn't you?
I know.
It's
Yeah.
just such an easy way to combine, and so whether you have
Yes.
a gut blend or a liver blend, or or maybe you're just using really amazing anti-inflammatory essential oils that are going to help move things along, those are all just so beneficial with a castor oil pack.
Yes, yes. And I love that you talk about anti-inflammatory oils too. Like, ginger's great, fennel's great. Dill actually, I think is really good. I think there's a lot you can do to kind of get the body to move, in sync.
Mm. Love that. Okay, so we talked about alertness. We talked about oxygenating the brain. We talked about oils. We want to go into oils for sleep because, as you mentioned, a lot of that congestion, a lot of why we're not clearing out the inflammatory, the metabolic waste or the inflammatory waste that could be building up, the amyloid plaques, is because we're not getting enough sleep. And let's be honest, you and I both know that it's one of the biggest complaints for people today is not getting enough sleep. I think essential oils are phenomenal for helping to shut your brain off despite yourself.
Yes.
So talk to me
Yes.
about what are some of your favorite oils, and do you love to pair them with rituals? Are we just putting them on the my bottom of my feet, or do I do a trifecta of things? What do you prefer?
Honestly, my favorite way to lavender has the most research, right? Because the linalool is amazing for sleep and relaxation. I like it in an Epsom salt bath. I think that the combination of the magnesium, in the Epsom salt, and also I use baking soda, which is alkalizing, and I just use like 2 drops of lavender, but I mix it into the Epsom salt before
Yes.
adding the water. There's something about kind of the full body assimilation of the lavender oil. I find that really relaxing. I feel like it kind of if you feel a cold coming on, it seems to make everything go away. So I do like ritual. I like for sleep. I find that the point kind of above the ears on the skin is a really good application point. It's kind of level with the pineal gland, which kind of responds to darkness and helps trigger the release of melatonin. So that's probably my favorite application point, or the back of the head or the bottom of the feet.
I love those. The back of the head for me is so. I just love that little spot. And what I think also I love about oils, whether it's for sleep or it's when you're waking up, whatever it's tied to ritual, is that your body, your brain gets used to that aroma. So there's something to be said about you put your lavender on, or you put your cedarwood or your clary sage or whatever oil you love for sleep, and your body's like, oh, okay, like it's bedtime. It's so that's another thing that I love about essential oils is we can train our brain, we can train our body to kind of cue up. It's okay, it's time to relax, or it's time to sleep, or it's time to create abundance and gratitude, or whatever the experience you're looking to create. Essential oils can heighten that and remind you. As I'm thinking about creating a sleep ritual for Kingston, our son, and just every day we do a little baby massage and we do these little things. And so eventually he gets to know, like, oh, this is bedtime activities. I feel like the same
Yes.
thing we need for adults.
Yes. Well, no, and I was thinking about that when you were talking about your tangerine in the morning. It really is, you're creating ritual. you're putting meaning and impetus. And so it almost, it does shift your body automatically. You can start to train yourself, like to the point where, the parasympathetic blend that I shared earlier, you can apply it on your mastery blend, but once you've been smelling it for a while, your body knows, oh, this is my relaxing blend.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And then it's time to shut that stress response mode down. That's what I've always loved so much about the oils is that you just by smell alone, you can train your body physiologically to shift in your favor. I say despite yourself, because sometimes that mental chatter and the list making and all the things that you're doing before nighttime, that combination, whatever sleep combo that you love, that combination can shut that down, whether you're done with that process or not. And that's powerful to me.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I feel like, that there is really a lot of potential to start using oils in that way for everything. It can be a great gear shift. And even, I know you talk about kind of hunger cues and peppermint for hunger. It's a way to signal satiety. Like we can kind of manually override our own operating system.
Yeah. Oh gosh, for cravings. Yes. You have an emotional craving moment, that difference between physical hunger and emotional hunger. And you can test it. You could test it with the peppermint. And if it just puts it to the wayside, most likely that was probably an emotional eating cue, versus an actual physical eating cue. Jodi, honey, what else? I just want to really quickly just kind of talk about your book. What were you excited about in creating this book? What were you hoping to help people achieve?
Yeah, I really want to do three things. The first was kind of explain more about how and why oils work and really get into the science of how it gets into the brain, how it gets into the reflex points in the skin. And then I kept seeing kind of the same underlying imbalances in the people that were finding me, that they were stuck in stress, that they weren't sleeping, that the toxins weren't leaving their body, that they were lacking energy, and that their immune system was dysregulated. And those lend themselves really well to oils. So I was really trying to help people understand what's going on so they better understand how to fix it. And then what oils, what recipes they can use, with the blends they have in their house to help kind of address what they're seeing, in their health and balance the imbalances.
Love that. So powerful. And so the book I know has been out. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Books are so everywhere books are sold, but you do have a little gift for us
Yes.
related to the book.
Yes, yeah. It's basically 25 different ways that you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And it goes into detail about how essential oils work in that capacity, but also things like using your tongue like a paintbrush and painting the roof of your mouth, breathing techniques, just things that you can do any place, anywhere without added props.
Wonderful. Ooh, that's sexy. I love
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on to the show today and sharing your brilliance, sharing your wisdom with us. I know that we are all walking away with multiple ways to be using these oils. And I love so much in this conversation that it was such a simple way of not only applying, but that we didn't get into a crazy number of blends. Like all of these are so doable, so actionable, and so easy to get our hands on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, my dear.
Thank you. Great to see you.